Drifting along with a tumbling tumbleweed.
Boomtowns were quickly growing towns that were wildly obnoxious, where prospectors fought over claims and thieves ruled the streets.
Tumbleweeds around me sing their lonely song. Nights underneath.
Vigilance committees were made up of volunteers that would help fight crime in the boomtowns. Hydraulic mining was a new technique used by prospectors that would use a high-pressured hose to wash away the surface dirt, rock, and gravel to get to the minerals underneath. A big area of grassland that the federal government owned was called open range because ranchers could use this where they could graze their cattle for free and not have to worry about private property.
I'm a tie-yippee-yippee-yay, with my foot in the stirrup and my hand on the horn. I'm the best damn cowboy ever was born. I'm a tie-yippee-yippee-yay, come a tie-yippee-yippee-yay. On a $10 horse and a $40 saddle, going into punching in longhorn cattle. Come a tie-yippee-yippee-yay, I'm a tie-yippee-yippee-yay. I started up the trail October 23rd.
The long drive was a drive from Texas to Sedalia, Missouri. Most of the cattle did not survive the trip, but the ones that did sold for 10 times as much as they would have back in Texas.
Now you ready? Till I'm up in the morning before daylight, and before I sleep the moon shine bright. Come a tie-yippee-yippee-yay, come a tie-yippee-yippee-yay.
Haciendas were elegant houses on vast ranches that covered thousands of acres of land in California that the Spanish elite owned. The Great Plains was a vast area of land in the West that was once thought to be useless for farming, but it turned out great for growing wheat. In 1862, the government wanted people to go out and settle on the Great Plains, so they passed the Homestead Act, which enabled the person to file a claim for only $10 for
Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about...
A homestead was an area of public land that was sold for private use. An individual could claim up to 160 acres of this, and after living on the land for 5 years, they would receive full ownership for that land. In the later years, government increased the acreage available, and with property ownership assured, more people came to settle in the Great Plains.
Some trails are happy, while others are blue. It's the way you ride that trail that counts. Here's a happy one for you. Happy trails to you. trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Bonanza farms were farms that were on the wheat belt that had hundreds of acres of land. They also were able to afford tractors to help harvest their crop, and they also hired laborers. Nomads were people that would travel to different areas, for example, the necessity of food. Annuities were annual payment from the government, but a lot of the money ended up disappearing from bureaucracies and corruption. The Sand Creek Massacre occurred in 1864 because settlers kept moving west onto Native American soil. The Indians then attacked wagons and stole cattle from ranches. Chief Black Kettle brought hundreds of Cheyenne Indians to the Fort Lyon to ask for a peace treaty. John Evans did not have the authority to make a peace treaty. He told them to camp out at the fort while he awaited orders. Later on, Colonel John Shivington of the Colorado Volunteers was ordered to attack the Cheyenne, and when they stopped at Fort Lyon, he was told they were waiting to negotiate. Shivington then said since the Cheyenne attack, settlers burned homes and raided wagons, there was able to know peace. That day, only 14 soldiers died, but between 69 and 600 Native Americans died. In 1867, the Congress formed the Indian Peace Commission. The goal of it was to make 2 large reservations on the Great Plains, one for the Sioux Indians and another one for another tribe of the Native Americans on the southern edge of the Great Plains. A thought of assimilation was brought into effect and was believed by some Americans. They then started settling west and dividing reservations into individual properties to mix up the culture. In 1887, the Dawes Act was passed, which gave a family 160 acres of Indian reservations. In 1862, President Lincoln signed the Pacific Railway Act, and 2 companies started to build railroads very quickly. This act made it so that the companies could have the right of way to use for their personal use. Cornelius Vanderbilt was a very successful railroad consolidator. He purchased a lot of land and joined 3 small railroads to form the New York Central. In a short amount of time, he extended control from New York to Chicago. Time zones divided the country into 4 sections to make railroad travel safer and more reliable. Land grants were like a gift from the government for people to use. Credit Mobilier was a railroad construction company that was set up of several stockholders in Congress. It turned out publicly known as a scandal in 1872.
You're under arrest.
You'll never catch me. Hey, that's not fair. Cowboys couldn't afford cannons.
They couldn't afford station wagons either.
Nice paneling.
All right, Pinhead, your time is up.
Who you calling Pinhead? I want to be Dirty Dad.